I'm Alex Drew from Faith in Later Life. Welcome to the Fuelcast. When I was 14, I was thrilled that I managed to convince the cinema ticket seller to let me into an 18 movie. I didn't use words, I just stood there looking the part. You see, when I was young, I wanted to be older and look older, and so I used makeup and clothes and what I presumably intended to be some level of sophistication to convince people and myself that I fitted in with the older crowd. Being taken for older or more mature didn't just get me in places, it commanded respect. Some of my ruminations were even taken for wisdom, and I was considered grown up. I loved it. I don't know when the shift happened. Maybe it was in my 30s, but suddenly I changed my mind. I didn't want to look older and be older anymore. I wanted to look younger and be younger. You see, it hadn't taken the world long to convince me that youth should be my goal. It did this by having 13-year-olds promote anti-aging potions, showing me how to apparently reduce the fine lines of aging, of which, of course, they had none. It portrayed older TV characters as miserable and often ridiculous. Even in my own circles, people began to regret another birthday and lie about their age. And suddenly, forgetting why we walked into a room became known as a senior moment, as if we hadn't been walking into rooms forgetting why since we were children. Sounds harmless, doesn't it? Fast forward a few more years, and I can expect to be treated differently at work, to be patronised and even considered a burden because others in our society have been brought up with the same negative attitudes about ageing as I was. The idea that ageing is something to be feared and that younger is better than older. And because they'll believe the hype, I'll be discriminated against in subtle ways and in ways more distinct. It will affect my self-esteem, my health, my sense of purpose, the way I experience day-to-day life when I'm older, and may even lead to an early death for me. It's called ageism, a social construct that brings together stereotyping, prejudice and discrimination. And the way things are going, most of us will experience ageism in society and even in the church. It comes from poor examples set to us by others in their attitudes and their use of language. It comes from fear of death and of aging, and it comes from denial, not facing up to the fact that aging will likely happen to all of us too. It seeps into our culture when we don't call it out. It's madness really, as if anyone can help aging. Whether we're 3 years old or 17, 42, 68 or 91, most of us will get older. Hallelujah. God designed us to age, and that's a good thing. Aging means living. Life is the antidote to death, and the Bible tells us that age is a divine blessing. It's God's glory revealed through His creation, you and me. There's no ageism in the Bible. We're called to love our neighbours as ourselves. God has no favourites. We are all loved equally, and nobody has cause to put themselves above another. We see people like Moses, Joshua and Anna living incredible lives for God well into old age. In the scriptures, age distinguishes people in a good way. The wisdom and experience gleaned over a lifetime, shared with younger generations who are honoured and privileged to learn from those later in life. In 1 Timothy, we're reminded not to rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were our father, and to treat older women as mothers. And Jesus, who regularly spoke out on behalf of those on the margins, led us in a beautiful example when he prioritised and entrusted the care of his mother to John, even from the cross. A reminder that we're to make good provision for the welfare and care of older people in our midst. It's time to call out ageism in all the places we see it happen, and it's time for us to be honest with ourselves if we're negative about aging, and at times without meaning to, we too may have deep-seated ageist thoughts. It's time to stand up and be counted. That shouldn't be hard. Much like in the Bible, when we take the time to notice, we see that our communities are filled with people in later life living to the full, taking risks, looking after themselves, learning new things, supporting their families financially and practically, being creative, keeping fit, praying for their neighbours, and still going on new adventures. Isn't it wonderful? Although not entirely exempt from ageism, the Church already leads in a great example. Where else in society do we see such an army of older people engaged in effective preaching, mentoring, children's work, serving on trustee boards, welcoming, mass catering, praying and more? But as with all areas of life, we can always do better. And when it comes to ageism, we have a vested interest to do so. After all, we're all getting older. Let's stop the world from convincing us that younger is somehow better than older. It's different, that's all. Instead, let's convince the world of God's view of aging, that it is a crown of glory bestowed on us by the Ancient of Days himself.